Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to install an Aero competition full titanium exhaust system on our 2015 Yamaha YZF-R1. The kit that we're going to install has the shorter silencer, the 230 millimeter silencer. With this removed, the dB killer that is included with it, 113 decibels loud. This is obviously not intended for street use. You're removing the muffler box, all that stuff, okay? This is a full titanium system from the engine all the way back. With the Aero system, obviously it's beautiful. Look at that carbon fiber end cap. This system comes with carbon can strap, and this will also come with a bracket that mounts the system up. So you'll be removing the passenger pegs with this, and you will not need the, I'm assuming you don't need, I should say, the exhaust mount that we've had to use with all the other exhausts. Just to clarify, we are pulling off a Yosh 3/4 system. Remember, when you see us do this, it doesn't mean that this isn't a good part and that's a better part. They're both great parts. I just don't feel like putting the bike back to stock again as we begin the project. Another thing you'll have to do with this is, remember, you'll be eliminating the exhaust servo with this, okay? A couple of different ways around it. We use a servo buddy that we get, a Woodcraft servo buddy, scooter net. It's already installed on the bike, so we don't have to worry about that, right? But that's something that you will need to do with your bike, is deal with that exhaust servo so you don't have an FI light. When we come back, I'm gonna have the lower fairing off, okay? We're gonna begin removing the Yosh 3/4 system as well as our stock headers. Okay, for my own benefit, what I did, there's really no instructions in the box, okay? This really reminds me a lot of like a kit racing part. Here's the finish on the titanium, right? Got this all slid together. We went over and weighed it. And this came in at a svelte 8.8 pounds for the entire assembled system. That is crazy light. Once I get the stock header off, I'm gonna send Tyler back over to the warehouse with the rest of the muffler box and the canister, and we'll get you a full weight on that as well. But now it's time to begin disassembling the bike to get it ready for the install of the exhaust. When we get it all put together and we run it, we're gonna run it with that dB killer in place, and then we are of course going to remove it and hear it in all of its glory. And this thing should sound pretty amazing with that. This will be the first, you can see I was just at the racetrack. Boy, we picked up all kinds of fasteners on, look at this. Those are not off my bike. I picked those up at the racetrack. That is insane. Riding around, thank God they weren't sharp. It's amazing what a hot slick to pick up off of the road surface. So now we'll just go through the process of removing it. You can see I rode with the Yosh 3/4 system, the Alpha. Stuff looked great, sounded great, bike performed fantastic, right? The coloration of the stainless is actually pretty cool. This pipe will actually be part of a giveaway that you will see in the coming weeks. One lucky R1 owner is going to win and receive my Yosh 3/4 system that was installed on the R1. All right, we've got the 3/4 system off now. We've shown you that a bunch of times, so now we're gonna focus on removing the factory header. Definitely, I would say we're gonna have some interference here with the oil cooler. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the mounting fasteners for the oil cooler, and that should give us the ability to kind of wiggle it around, and I think that will be sufficient. You wanna be very careful with your radiator too when you do this. You don't wanna create any unneeded indentations in the fins of the radiator, because when you do that, you reduce the cooling capacity of the radiator. Every time those fins get compressed, it's going to reduce the cooling capacity, right? Because the air does not flow through that anymore. as effectively as it would have previous. So be careful with that. Basic hand tools here, all the way. I'm going to use some Allens, sockets, wrenches, really nothing that I would label out of the ordinary for this particular project. Pretty basic stuff. Got a little fastener here on the other side. And that should get our oil cooler loose. Now we've got the mount here at the bottom for the lower radiator mount. And from here it should be pretty simple. We have race bodywork on the motorcycle, and that also makes it a little bit easier. If you need to remove your stock bearings and you haven't done it yet, and you'd like to know how, we do have a full video removing that stock bodywork. You could probably use that as a reference as well, if you feel like you need it. And then I feel like we're gonna have pretty sufficient clearance here at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin to loosen up our headers. I have a swivel in case I need it, but I'm going to begin with a wobble extension and a 3/8 ratchet. 8mm Allen is what they've used here from the factory. You can see the nuts that are coming off. It's pretty unique. They did a lot of stuff like that with the R1. It's pretty trick. Okay, so we're going to go through the process of removing all the fasteners here. What you're going to need to do that is either a wobble extension like you see me using right now, or an actual universal to get in there and work with the angle. Get that out of the way, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Once we get this out of the way, I think we're going to be good to go. It's actually a little crossover tube that someone was catching on that. And out it comes. Wow, that is light too. That is our stock header off the Yamaha. Now I'm going to send the kit over to the warehouse and we'll have them weigh the entire stock system, compare it to the Arrow. All right, now we've got the header off, right? And I talked to you about these fasteners earlier on that they were using for the header bolts, right? Very unique fastener. Got the internal Allen there. Hardened steel, of course. I'm gonna go ahead and prepare these for safety wire. I'm drilling a 5/64 hole right through the side, very small hole. You know, you wanna make as small of an insult as possible to really protect the integrity of the fastener. And I'm going to give you an idea of the stuff you need to do that, right? I've set it up here in a vise, right, with a metric bolt to hold that in place. I've got a center punch, and get that in the appropriate spot. Strike it a couple of times. And then I'm using a cobalt tip bit. I've already drilled all these fasteners plus some other fasteners with this one, so it is a little dull at this point. I'll give you an idea of what this takes. How I like to do this is I like to use a cobalt tip drill. I typically will not lubricate the bit at all, and I like to use a combination of a little bit of pressure and then finding the appropriate speed where the drill bit really starts to work and bite in. And you'll see that by the shavings that it's throwing. As the shavings start to get bigger, like right there, now it's biting pretty nice. And I found these typically work a little bit better at slower speed with a little bit of pressure behind it. Just a good steady pace. Kind of a tedious act, but you know, you're drilling through a hardened fastener, so. And there you have it. Now I have each one of the fasteners is pre-drilled and ready for safety wire once we're done with our installation. Okay, I'm going to begin by installing the small head pipes, right? And the first thing that you want to do is make sure your gasket is still up there and in place. Make sure it's reusable. If they're not reusable, if they're damaged, you know, hopefully you've ordered in advance and you've got gaskets with the system. Honestly, I have never, in all the years I've done this, had to replace exhaust gaskets. They've always been in reusable condition, whether the bike had some miles on it or it was used. All the pipe manufacturers pretty much recommend replacing the gaskets, just so you're aware of that, right? It's kind of a cover your butt scenario. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and get each one of these little head pipes up here in place. One of the keys with installing these, I'm not going to tighten anything up right now, but one of the keys is you want to make sure that each one of the fasteners is run down evenly. You don't want to have one run down far more than the other side. It creates uneven pressure and you don't want that. With gaskets, okay, here is one of the gaskets that did not hold itself up there. You can see it's in fantastic shape. Because of the shortness of these pipes, I'm going to be able to, I believe, hold this in place and put the pipe on at the same time. If you're not able to do that, you know what works great is a little bit of grease, right? A couple blobs of grease up there in the head, hold the gasket in place long enough for you to get the pipe in, and then when the grease gets hot, it just burns away. So you can also use that. When we come back, I'll have all four of those header flanges on and we'll begin assembling the system. Okay, now we're ready to continue assembling our header. They do include like some anti-seize here for the pipes. We're going to use that. You just need a small coating here on the inside. That's going to be enough, right? It helps with installation, and what it also really helps with is if you need to pull this back apart down the road, it makes all the difference. And you'll see I'm going to begin with the two center pipes that have the crossover as part of them, okay? Because I need to have these bad boys together, basically, when we slide them up into place. So I'll go ahead and line that up. And you can see I've still got the header flanges are still loose, right? That's going to allow me to manipulate this a little bit. A little wiggle, a little twist, and it will slide right up into position, like so. And from here, I'm going to go as far as to slide the springs over. They supply a nice spring tool, right? Theirs is right here. I'm actually using the one I took from my Yosh system. A little better, I think. Get these springs into place, and that'll help finish off too and make sure we have that pipe all the way up there. Okay, we've got the pipes lubricated here. We're going to install the last down pipe, and then we'll be ready to begin to assemble the collector portion. the lube in there, of course. And we'll put our spring in place. We're going to leave the header flanges loose. That'll be one of the last things that we'll tighten up, okay? Because we don't want the system binding at all as we build it from front to back. Now we'll get the collector pieces and begin to assemble those. Okay, now we'll start to build the collector. Start over here on this side. If you were to tighten your header pipes first, this would be virtually impossible, okay? Because it needs to move around, right? Get those seated in there real nice, like so. See, this is going pretty well. Remember, we use the lubrication. We're going to go ahead and do the one on the other side, install all the springs, and then we'll finish the collector off here towards the back. Okay, now we've got the other side all assembled. We'll do this one. I will say, I mean, it clearly illustrates that this is a true premium product because this is going together very, very nicely. There's been no struggle thus far. We'll go ahead and put the springs on and then put the rest of the collector on. You can see how, right, with the springs on there, it puts a little tension on it and it really helps to kind of pull everything together. Now we'll grab on the collector. And look at these welds too. I mean, that is absolute artwork. Gorgeous. Okay, now let's see how difficult this is going to be. Remember, I have everything is lubricated and ready to go. Jeez. Like absolute butter. 2 more springs, and then we're going to have to look at our mounting situation here. You can see that they're modifying our stock mount. I will put this spring on the other side here in a minute, but I want to kind of get a feel for what I need to do here now. Got some spacers and whatnot here that have been included with this. Several pieces of hardware are included. They actually even have plugs if you're not going to be using the bungs here. They have reducers that will accept the stock. If you want to remove those, you're able to put in the larger aftermarket sensors. So I'm going to take a minute now off camera. I'm going to kind of work with this and figure out what they have intended for this. Right, I think a couple of these fasteners are going to be used with the new exhaust bracket, and some of the other fasteners, of course, are going to be used here with our exhaust mount. They're using the stock mount. You see this is clearly going to ride a little bit lower, very straight flowing. Okay, and there's probably definitely some power to be picked up with that. In order to install the supplied exhaust bracket, right, you need to pull the tail off because we have to have access to the other side of the subframe. Right? These bolts are passing through the through holes. Right, we've got spacers, so we're going to put a washer on the fastener, washer, fastener, then the bracket. Okay, got a couple of washers, spacers. And now we'll come up here, slide that bad boy into position. Nylock, they supplied locking nuts, which is very nice. Slide this into place, and then we'll grab a T-handle and the appropriate wrench and get this bracket all snugged up. Bracket's mounted, we're ready for our canister. Something I can't stress enough, remember, before you start this motorcycle, right, clean the pipes. I've heard cleaning titanium with WD-40 is effective. Typically I use brake clean with a brand new rag and clean it that way. carbon fiber canister strap, like so. Got our mounting hardware here. Some instructions in the kit would have been nice, but end of the day, I think what they're really focused on here is, this is kind of a kit racing part almost. Very high-end system, and they're anticipating that the technician working on the motorcycle is going to be able to install it because they have a lot of knowledge, right, and experience. So okay, we'll go ahead and snug this up right now, and then we'll put our spring on, and we'll go back to the front of the motorcycle and begin tightening up the entire system. Oxygen sensors and the exhaust mount here. We've already got everything in place, right? Wiggled it around enough so all the springs have pulled, the joints tight, so we're ready to tighten this up. And I'm going to kind of come from back to front because there's really not a lot of movement here, okay? So we're not going to have any negative impacts up here. Tighten this up, the adapter that they put in there, make sure it's tight. For the O2 sensors, we've done this a couple of different ways. You can take the whole thing out if you want to, or you can grab the wires up above the sensor, twist it like so, okay? And then when you thread it back in, it will just be unwinding that. You're not really putting any stress on the end of the wires. This is something I did for a long, long time when I was fixing cars in the dealers. Never had an issue. Some folks aren't comfortable with it. If you're not, hey man, just pull the whole sensor out, unplug everything, and you can do that too. What I'm doing is just presenting you with a viable option. Now, snug up the mount bracket they supplied. Like so. Back of that, we've got a 13 millimeter. Okay, now we need to come up to our header fasteners, right? What I did is when I put these up here, I made sure that I had every one of these run up there very evenly already. So I'm pretty much in a position now where I'm ready to go ahead and snug these up. I'm going to use the same tools I used for removal, right? I've got the 8 millimeter Allen. I have it mounted on a universal joint. It's going to allow me to get up in there. I was able to do several of them with using a wobble extension. I'll show you what that is in a second if you're not familiar with it. Okay. Still going to go from side to side and try to keep them as even as possible because this is very important that you've got a good even pull with these. Now I'll begin to snug it up. And I will do one header pipe at a time, just like this. Okay, and I'll hit the torque on each one a couple of times to make sure that it's good to go. Like so. And then we'll be able to safety wire this when we're done. So when I come back, I'm going to have all of the header flanges tight. Remember, keep them as even as possible. You can look up in there and see the gap between the cylinder head and the header flange. You don't want to see one that is grossly larger than the next. I got it all the way down. Remember, some of the oils and stuff in the titanium is going to smoke a little bit when we first started. Not a big deal, right? This is with the DB killer in it. We've already run the bike for a minute, so the engine's warm, so nobody freak out that I'm revving the motor. It's not cold. That's idle. Remember, we're inside of a building here right now. That is idle with the DB killer. And now we're going to go ahead and take that out, and we'll be right back. All right, now we're going to start it up with the DB killer remove. And that's revving it up a little bit. I would definitely agree with the 113 decibel rating that Aero gave it. This bike is going to be ridden only on the racetrack from this point forward, okay? So I think, you know, this is appropriate. Obviously, might not be the best choice for the road, considering it's not a road legal exhaust. You know, and you look at the diameter of the pipes and stuff too. You know, if I ever do get in the mood to build the engine, it's going to be really appropriate for that. It's going to work well for that, as the flow rate on this thing is probably amazing. So there you have it. There is the Aero competition full titanium exhaust with the short can. There's a longer can, but nobody wants the longer can because it's too quiet, right? 230 millimeter can. We've got a couple of these systems in titanium available, and we also have a couple with stainless steel tubing, basically the same system, but just stainless steel tubing, so the video would be relevant. And if you just want to close up too, you can go ahead and just show the safety wire job in there. I got the nuts are all safety wired on the headers. We'll finish up by safety wiring the springs onto the pipe. I think I'll leave this one on the motorcycle for a while. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com.